It all started on what was supposed to be a calm weekend at my cabin in the woods. The air was fresh, the lake was quiet, and I was ready to enjoy some much-needed peace. But then came the unexpected call from the front gate. A woman from the HOA, someone who had built herself quite a reputation in the neighborhood for making rules that didn't exist, was standing there with a clipboard and a smirk. She claimed she had reserved my private cabin for an event, not just for herself, but for 100 guests. That's right, 100 people, all apparently expecting to party on my property like it was theirs. At first, I thought she was joking. But as she rattled off names and talked about tables, music, and parking arrangements, it became clear she wasn't bluffing. She believed she had the power to take over my cabin, as if it were some kind of community hall. I reminded her that my cabin was privately owned, not an HOA clubhouse, but she waved me off like I was the one out of line. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was her trying to push her authority where it didn't belong. Now imagine the scene. Cars lined up outside, people waiting to get in, and me standing there with the gate locked. She kept insisting that I had no choice, that her reservation gave her full control. But instead of backing down, I decided to turn the tables and let her own arrogance expose itself in front of everyone. What happened next not only left her embarrassed, but it also made the crowd question everything she had claimed. And that's where the real twist begins. The crowd outside the gate was restless, shifting in their cars and glancing at each other with confusion. Some of them rolled down their windows to ask what was going on, clearly expecting a big gathering at their reserved cabin. I could see coolers, folding chairs, and even kids in the back seats. These people had no idea they were being dragged into someone else's power play. That's when I realized just how far Karen had gone with her story. She had convinced nearly 100 people that this was her event, that she had the right to host them here, and that I was just supposed to step aside. It didn't make sense at first. Why would she go through all this trouble? But then it clicked. This was about control, about showing everyone in the HOA that she was in charge, even when it wasn't her property. She had been pulling smaller stunts for months, like acting as if she could approve who used the lake or telling neighbors when they could park in their own driveways. But this was different. She had crossed the line from being annoying to flat-out reckless. I watched as she strutted up to the gate, her clipboard clutched tightly like it was some kind of official document. She started calling names, checking people off as if she were running a guest list. The nerve of it almost made me laugh, but the growing impatience of the crowd made the situation feel heavier. These people had been promised a party, and the longer they waited, the more they started to wonder if they were on the wrong side of things. I stood firm, letting her dig herself deeper. The real question wasn't whether she backed down. It was how far she was willing to go before everything unraveled. Karen's voice grew louder as she waved her clipboard in the air, trying to rally the crowd behind her. "Everyone, don't worry," she said, with a tone full of false authority. "I've got this reserved. He can't keep us out." A few people actually nodded, looking at me like I was the one making trouble. That was the moment I understood the real danger. Not the party itself, but the way she had twisted the story so well that innocent neighbors believed her. Some of the guests looked uncomfortable, whispering among themselves. One man leaned out of his truck and asked, "Are you sure this is even allowed?" His question seemed to shake a few others, but Karen quickly shut him down with a glare, snapping back that she had all the paperwork. Of course, there was no paperwork. She was bluffing, but the crowd didn't know that yet. Meanwhile, I noticed a few familiar faces in the line of cars. Families I'd waved to on the lake, neighbors I'd shared firewood with in the winter, people who knew me better than to think I'd agree to hand over my cabin. Their eyes met mine, and I could see the doubt forming. That doubt was my ally. Still, the scene was tense. Some guests were already unloading coolers, while others argued quietly about whether to wait or leave. A couple of kids pressed their faces to the windows, watching the standoff like it was some kind of show. Every minute that passed, Karen grew more desperate to hold her authority. She wasn't just fighting for a party, she was fighting to keep control of her image. The question was, how long could she keep convincing them before the truth broke through? Karen's voice carried across the line of cars as she declared again that this event was hers to run. She waved her clipboard like it was a badge of honor, but her words were starting to clash with the reality of a locked gate that wouldn't budge. The more she insisted, the more restless the crowd became. Some guests stepped out of their vehicles, folding their arms and staring between us, waiting to see who would give in first. I could feel the tension building like a storm. One wrong move, and the situation could spiral. A few people muttered that they'd driven hours for this gathering, while others asked if there had been some mistake. Karen snapped back with firm answers, but her cracks were showing. Sweat glistened on her forehead, and her smile had started to falter. She was trying to keep the illusion alive, but it was slipping away in front of everyone. Then came the turning point. One woman near the back shouted, "If this was really reserved, where's the confirmation?" Heads turned. Karen froze for just a second too long, and in that silence, doubt spread through the group like wildfire. People began questioning her, one after another, voices layering over each other. Still, she didn't stop. Instead, she doubled down, insisting that I was the one causing the problem. She pointed at me, raising her voice, saying I had no right to lock the gate and that the HOA supported her decision. Her words drew every eye to me, and suddenly it felt like the weight of the entire crowd was pressing down. My hands stayed on the gate, steady but firm, as the noise around me rose to a boiling point. The moment of truth was closing in, and there was no turning back. Just when it seemed like the tension couldn't get any higher, another car pulled up at the end of the line. It wasn't just any neighbor. It was one of the actual HOA board members, someone who usually kept a low profile and never got involved in drama. The crowd quieted for a moment as he stepped out, clipboard free, and clearly confused by the scene. He looked from Karen to me, then at the long trail of cars packed with families, coolers, and supplies. His first words were calm but sharp. "What's going on here?" Karen rushed toward him, almost tripping in her hurry, and started her usual performance. She spoke fast, talking over me, insisting she had authority, that this was approved, and that I was causing unnecessary trouble. For a moment, it looked like she was about to rope him into her story too. But then his eyes narrowed, and he asked her a question that made the crowd stir. "Show me the reservation form." That was the twist no one expected. Karen had always leaned on half-truths and her confident tone, but this time she was being called out in front of everyone. The silence was heavy as she hesitated, flipping through papers on her clipboard that were nothing more than handwritten notes. A few people craned their necks, trying to see, and murmurs rippled through the group. But instead of admitting defeat, she escalated. She raised her voice, accusing the board member of being out of the loop and claiming she had direct approval from someone higher up. It was a desperate move, but it only made the tension worse. Now, the conflict wasn't just between her and me. It had dragged the HOA leadership into the spotlight. And suddenly, the stakes for her and for everyone watching shot even higher. The HOA board member stood still, his face tightening as Karen's voice grew shrill. The crowd, once split between doubt and loyalty, leaned in closer, waiting for his response. Finally, he stepped forward, his tone firm but controlled. "Karen, there is no such thing as a reservation system for private cabins.
You know that.
This property is his, not the HOA's." His words cut through the tension like a blade, and for the first time all day, the power shifted. The crowd erupted in murmurs. People began shaking their heads, some even laughing bitterly at the realization they had been misled. A few parents quickly called their kids back into their cars, clearly embarrassed for having believed her story. Karen's face turned bright red, her confidence collapsing as fast as the illusion she had built. She fumbled with her clipboard, her words tumbling out in half-sentences, but no one was buying it anymore. I unlocked the gate just enough to step forward, standing beside the board member. The sight of us together made it clear the game was over. Karen tried one last desperate attempt to salvage her pride, insisting this was all a miscommunication, but the board member shook his head. "You owe everyone here an explanation," he said firmly. That's when the twist hit. From the back of the crowd, a man spoke up, someone I didn't recognize. He revealed that Karen had collected donations from several families to cover the supposed event costs. Gasps spread through the group, and suddenly, the embarrassment turned to anger. People who had trusted her now demanded answers, their voices rising louder than hers ever had. In that moment, the truth finally caught up with her. The party she tried to control had turned into the very stage where her own lies unraveled. The moment the truth came out, the energy around the gate shifted completely. Neighbors who had shown up excited for a party now turned their frustration toward Karen. Some demanded their money back. Others shook their heads in disbelief at how easily they had been fooled. A few families quietly packed their things and left, not wanting to be part of the scene any longer. For the first time, Karen had no one left to lean on. Her clipboard, once her symbol of authority, now looked like a flimsy prop. The HOA board member didn't waste words. He told her firmly that what she had done was unacceptable and that the HOA would be discussing her actions at the next meeting. That simple statement carried more weight than anything I could have said. It wasn't about me versus her anymore. It was her against the truth, and everyone could see it clearly. I stood back, letting the situation resolve itself. A few neighbors came up to me, apologizing for believing her story and thanking me for standing my ground. I reminded them it wasn't about blame. It was about protecting what's right. Owning a cabin wasn't just about having a place to stay. It was about the hard work and care that went into it. No one had the right to take that away with lies and power plays. By the time the last car pulled out, the quiet of the woods returned. The gate clicked shut, and I finally had the peace I was looking for at the start of the weekend. The difference was that now the community had seen the truth for themselves. And sometimes, that's the only real way to end a fight, with honesty shining brighter than arrogance.